This week we would like to talk more specifically about how we can support female faculty in our theological institutions. And quite often when we highlight women, we start talking about two terms. And I'd like to just introduce these two items so that we can put them into the framework that would be fitting for this week. The first one is, when we start talking about women, we talk about female equality. And by that, most people mean a lack of active discrimination. And when it comes to equality in education, we normally speak of something like equal access, so which means that entrance regulations would be the same for both women and men. But what that often looks like is a bit like this. So equality says we give the same to everybody. But equality and equal access do not take into consideration that some people are disadvantaged right from the start. And in the area of education, we often we find that in particular, and it begins with girls being held back from schooling to give priority to a boy to go to school. As we continue on in education, it is it's cultural expectations being placed on women in regard to family and having children and taking care of others. And it's often not something that women want to give up or that they should have to give up. But because of how we are organized, because of how things are structured, it is made particularly difficult for women. And this is when we start talking not so much about equality, but equity. And equity looks a bit more like this. So instead of giving everybody the same, without recognizing individual needs, everybody gets exactly what he or she needs. So equity gives the right amount of support to every individual. The Association of African Universities, defines gender equity as follows. Gender equity strategies are those that recognize that in order to promote equality between women and men within and through education, special measures may be required to redress prior inequalities that have constrained women's access to and utilization of resources on an equal basis with men. And by speaking about these two terms, we risk setting off a lot of red flags in your minds, because these terms have become very politicized. You have lots of different groups using these terms to push one agenda or another. We want to use these terms this week in the factual manner that they are actually meant to be used. We hope that by doing so you will also see our heart in this. We wanted to particularly introduce the term equity because this week, particularly when we come to the policy sessions, we will talk a lot more about how to give women an extra box. So how can we help women to start looking over the fence? So that is why we wanted to just set these terms also in the framework that we want to use them. And also I think that this is such a powerful picture, even though it's just a game, but you look at it and you kind of understand immediately what it means. So we entitled this session, Hearing the Voices. It is based on a survey for female faculty we did last September, so it's just a few months old. The survey was on gender equity in theological education in Africa. We had 195 responses from 71 institutions across 20 sub-Saharan countries. So here it comes. 79.4% of female faculty said that the person they report to is a man. Another 45% estimated that people in their institution assume that the top leader would also be men. So this highlights the overall maleness of leadership and leadership structures in theological institutions. These figures also correspond to some other faculty statistics that we requested from 51 institutions across Africa. We came to 22.8% of female faculty across the sample. So we roughly have a split of 20 to 80% in favor of men. So we can say that theological institutions are largely male institutions with male communication styles and male working hours, and we will get to that a little bit as well, and a sort of male outlook on life. And having said that now, I want to make it abundantly clear that if it was the other way around, if we had 80% of women and 20% of men, we would very likely be talking about very similar issues. So we would be talking about a predominantly female networking style and predominantly female communication styles and leadership styles, which might make it difficult for men to fit in. So the aim is never to push one to the neglect of the other. The aim is only to seek more balance, okay? But as it stands right now, we have a 20 to 80% split in favor of men, which means that the few women who are at theological institutions kind of have to make themselves fit. And it often feels like a bit of the proverbial square peg in a round hole. And this is the picture that you see here. They make themselves fit, but in the process of making themselves fit, they also lose something of how God has made them as women, of how God has gifted them as women. A few of the chips will come off. That's just how it is. Now, for the men present, I want to invite you to imagine something with me. Imagine that you were invited to a meeting, but it is in a part of town that you don't really know very well. So you walk along and you're looking for the building and you're like, oh, I think this is the building. Okay, so you go inside the building. It's a big building, so you have to go and look for the right room. So you ask around and you're like, oh, okay, yeah. And then you think that you found the right room. So you go in and you open the door. And then you suddenly realize that you're standing in a room full of 60 women. And because that door was a little creaky, everyone heard you come in, ee! And suddenly 60 women turn their heads and look at you. Now I bet with you that your first reaction was, I think I'm in the wrong room. And this is kind of what many women have said, how it feels to be at theological institutions. There are very few women, and in most rooms, they feel out of place. Now, coming back to our stereotypes from this morning, women, we kind of shared along. Women are usually considered more communal, which means they are supportive, they are concerned for the well-being of others, it's all the family kind of traits, looking after kids and these things. And they're usually considered less agentic, so less ambitious, less determined, less self-confident, less a lot of things. And this has usually worked against their access to faculty positions, to leadership positions, and also to senior faculty positions. Even though women are held to a higher social conduct standard, they tend to be criticized for being dominant or assertive or self-promoting, or expressing disagreement. And all of that was shared this morning as well. You're not supposed to talk back. You know, women are soft, not ambitious, so all of that. And this also impacts how women network, causing them to hold back for fear of being seen or appearing power hungry or self-promoting. Now this is reflected in our survey as well. We had 71% of female faculty stating that as women, they are mindful of how they communicate at work and how they exercise authority. I wouldn't quite go as far as to say they're walking on eggshells, but before speaking, you would think through exactly all the people that are in the room and how they might react, and kind of, you know, make sure that your approach to communicating an important subject would kind of fall on open ears. A further 80% stated that they are often or always cautious when self-promoting at work. 63.5% said that they downplay their accomplishments when speaking to others. Women have a greater tendency to underrate their skills and performance and to not take credit. And a very common response is to praise. Oh, you've done it so great. It was a team effort. By that, we are taking a step back. 39, it also affects how women behave in meetings. 39% reported that they often or always wait to be acknowledged in meetings before speaking. 45% felt that there was a varying degree of pressure to conform to gender stereotypes at their institution. And one example of that is that 55.7% said that as women, they're expected to be nurturing at work. As in, this is reflected in the expectation that women would be more caring for the students' needs, spend more time caring for students' needs, spend more time listening to students, spend more time serving other faculty members as well. So again, we have the caring side from our cultural gender expectations coming in. So for men, there seems to be much more of flexibility to care or not to care so much. But women are expected to act, and this is a direct quote now, as a motherly enabler or with daughterly obedience. Motherly enabler or with daughterly obedience. We also asked very specifically about chapel times and devotions, for example. The chapel is usually a space where a theological institution meets denominational values, put it that way. And a clash might become most visible. So we asked specifically about whether women are allowed to preach in chapel, whether female faculty are allowed to preach. And we kind of got a mixed picture back. So even though women tend to be allowed to preach, there usually would not be a balance of female and male preachers in chapel, and priority is given to men. Now, when I was thinking about that, I thought, well, if you have 80% men at your institution, you do the math, you'd have 80% of preachers. So it would not necessarily be on purpose that you'd have less women preaching, but it would just be an outworking of how many men and women you have at your institution. But there are a couple of things that they shared that I also wanted to share, and just as a direct quote now. Very few women are given the opportunity to preach, and if one is given the opportunity, there is such a high expectation of performance, which, if it is not met, one is not likely to be invited again. But it is a different case for a man. Another female faculty member said that there is a feeling that we are used when convenient, not planned, but as a backup. Now, I think that we can probably all agree that on the one hand, preaching is a gift, but it is also a skill that needs to be developed. And there are probably just as many average to bad male preachers as there are average to bad female preachers. But if a man preaches badly, most of the time we would just think, oh, he just didn't do a good job. Fair enough. It is very different for a woman. If a woman preaches badly, many to most will think that she preached badly because she is a woman, not just because she might not have had enough time to prepare. And here we are back to our stereotypes. So of note is that 67.2% shared that theological views on women are never, rarely, or only occasionally discussed constructively and proactively at their institution. This is what one participant shared. I have been hired as a lecturer, but no communication has been made to students as to why that is okay, and I'm left to answer these questions on my own. Some students find my role contradicting the stance of our college or denomination, and they are left in that confusion until they have the boldness to ask me directly. Now, this shows that when institutions do not position themselves openly regarding their stance on women and having them lead and teach, the undue burden of actually explaining themselves falls onto the female faculty member, and it is an undue burden. Much confusion for students, faculty, and stakeholders can be avoided if we have, as institutions, we have clear policies and guidelines, and we communicate them well, and we invite people into a dialogue about them. And it often feels like we're opening Pandora's box, but as we shared earlier on, the more dialogue there is, you can never really have too much talking. The more dialogue there is, the freer people feel to actually express themselves and to come in and to chip in and to work hard on creating a community in which everyone can flourish. Now, there are a couple more items I'd like to share before we go into a bit of a discussion time. One is about something that you will probably have never heard of, and it's called the similarity attraction. So when we come into the hiring process, we often fall victim to what is called the similarity attraction. So because our theological institutions are quite male, most of the hiring boards would also be quite male, and it is very human. It would be exactly the same with women, but very human. When we are hiring, we often look for the same in the person. We often look for ourselves in the person that we want to hire. We look for ourselves for our institution in the person that we want to hire. And there's nothing wrong with that. But the outcome often is that we hire a little bit of more of the same. And because 80% of our institutions are male, what that results in usually is that we hire more men. And it's just an outworking of what it is. The recommendation here is actually quite simple. Use a balance of female and male interviewers on your hiring board so that you can check on each other, so that you don't just hire the person that looks and talks most like you. And also as a recommendation, just to give some gender-related training to your hiring boards, a little bit of what we are doing this week. When we come to women in leadership, and this is what I will close with now before we go into a bit of a discussion time, I sometimes hear it said that women don't put themselves forward for open job positions, even when it is made clear that they can and should apply. And it can create the impression that women are just not interested. This is usually wrong. What actually happens is something else. Studies have found that women often hesitate to seek out leadership positions. Without specific encouragement or endorsement of their credentials from others, women will often accept a broader leadership role in response to a personalized request from key individuals out of a willingness to fulfill a compelling need within the institution and/or in response to the desire or sense of purpose to employ their abilities for the benefit of others. I read this description and I think back of my own life, and I can say this is true, for me at least. What this means is, and again this comes into what we discussed earlier, women are not supposed to be self-promoting. Women are not supposed to put themselves forward. Women are not, these are all the expectations we have. And if we seek to involve women in more leadership, women in more faculty positions, women will often take everyone in their lives into account when considering a new role, and how that might affect their husband, their family, their children, all the other responsibilities and jobs that they're involved with. And they might take much longer to respond, and their first response might also simply be a no. If we want to involve women, we often have to seek them out, give them more time, and also just go the extra mile with them. It's just how it is. Now, normally, I would open the floor for an open discussion now. It is almost impossible to do that with the size of this group. So we will do something slightly different now. I will ask you to just to sit in groups of 4. Please be that mixed groups. And please do not sit with someone from your own school, okay? So mix around a little bit. Mixed groups, do not sit with your school. And then think through these 2 items. What was the most impactful thing you heard in this session? Why? Was there anything you found challenging? Or anything that made you uncomfortable? Discuss. You know, maybe you know the concept of a popcorn prayer. It's like very short sentences as a thank you. We will do popcorn responses. So we can't have long, but as a manner of feedback, what is your takeaway from this session and from the last session? What would stick in your mind the most? Let's start with that one. So popcorn, please start out and be loud, stand up, talk loudly, then we don't have to do it with the microphone.
Comparison between equality and equity.
Thank you. Equality and equity, that comparison. More.
Similarity attraction.
Okay.
Qualities are employing because of similarity attraction.
Okay. Thank you. More.
The requirement for better communication.
More dialogue, more communication. You can never talk enough. Those of you who are married will know that. I saw a hand over there. Yes, please.
Yes. Women, when they are convinced about a thing, and when there is an opportunity out there, that they should go forward.
Also, yes, thank you. More. Yes, please.
Square women
Square peg in a round hole.
in men's way.
Yeah.
Some part of women chisel the way.
Yeah.
And it's affecting the church.
Thank you. More. Yes, please.
Yes, we identify equality, and it's important because no one is left behind.
Yeah, wonderful. Yeah, that's a good sentence. More from over there. You're very quiet. Yes, member. Having everyone benefit from your leadership because it will promote the whole institution. Thank you. Yes, please.
We accept better when we encourage and promote gender equality.
Okay. Thank you so much. Yes.
And then what is taken away from me is that you got to consider your goal or your vision. If you have a goal or a vision, then it wouldn't be a problem for you to bring everybody on board to be able to achieve that.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Yes, please.
Gender blind policies and practices in our institutions.
Okay. A couple more? Don't be shy. Yes, please.
We need to go the extra mile and do more encouragement so that women have the courage, the courage to come forward.
Thank you so much. One last one, yes. Yeah.
High expectation on women performance.
Thank you. Okay, one more. Agnes.
The catch-22, even being users if there's a high expectation for them to perform, so they don't even have time to do that.
I read something that stuck in my mind recently. Women are the backbone of theological institutions, and it is a double catch because it means that they will always stay in the back. It stuck in my mind somehow. It's a little bit of the same. Now, things you want us to explore more. What are you still missing? Yes, please.
Yeah, I think our group was wrestling with how to encourage women more to see their role, particularly when they express some resistance. So identify needs to help them.
Can we have someone, sorry, could someone just take a note of what is being said? I don't see any of my team here. Sorry, I'm looking around. Paul, would you mind?
I can try, but can you repeat that?
Yeah, so we were talking about strategies to encourage women when they appear resistant or are resistant to take up diverse roles.
Thank you so much. Yes, please.
Structures are as important as the change of mind. Same with both structure and
Yeah. So structures are as important. Changing structures is as important as changing the mind. So they're both equally important, and we will come to that on Thursday in particular when we start talking about policies, how to respond to challenges of diversity, how we can have a pastoral response to diversity. I saw a hand. Yes, Kyle.
I think our group, the struggle was, how do you implement equity in a way that doesn't foster inequality or create valid accusations of unfairness in the system?
And that is a very good point, which I will not respond to right now. Thank you. Yes, please.
Yes, thank you. In our theological institutions, we need supportive systems to be included for women so that they can be flourishing in different areas. Thank you.
Thanks. Okay. Yes, please.
I think as we think of female theological education, involvement and participation in theological education, we need to think deeper than what we are doing. And thinking deeper is what makes it attractive to the females. Because that point you talk about similarity, attraction. Yeah. When you look at the percentage of the females to the male in terms of the programs we have,
Yeah.
you find it that we have a lower percentage of females. And the reason is when they come in, they are asking the question, after my graduation, then what?
Then what?
So we need to be more intentional in this approach by saying that when they come in, as they are graduating, we need to find out where they are going to. Because they can't go to church. The church is not open for them. So what other ministries can we help them to get jobs? So that before they get that PhD to be in the faculty, they have something that prepares them and gives them hope after graduating.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. Yes, please, here.
I'd be interested to explore more about relationships between women in leadership and sort of women supporting other women. What are the challenges there, woman to woman?
So just as a side comment here, I have a dual role, one with the Overseas Council Europe, where Andreas is my boss as a regional consultant, and also with ACTEA as the Engagement Director for Women in Theological Education. Over the next few months, you will hear a bit more about ACTEA for Women. We are planning some learning cafes, we're planning a mentoring program, we are planning some more support workshops, research and writing, but also just connecting and networking women. It speaks exactly onto what you were saying. We can just wanting to give support to the women that we have, in the hopes that they might multiply. Now I lost the...
Yes. Possibly being able to explore more issues to do with the cultural realities and the stereotypes that we mentioned. Because if you look like our churches, we have a majority of people in almost all churches are women. And so then when it comes to leadership position, even in church where majority are women, you still find by the time we end up at the pastoral positions, then men become more than the many women that are in the church. Yeah. So then that raises the question of the issue of not just not having ladies being there, but what stops them from finding their place in leadership position in terms of theological institutions or other places. So maybe we need to know whether those stereotypes and our cultural issues affect our thinking, so that those appointing and those being appointed as women, that we don't see like that's our place, not forgetting that some churches don't also accommodate women pastors. So that mindset, the fact that on Sunday is only male pastors leading us, has it possibly affected the way we look at this field? Thank you.
Thank you so much. I think we will slowly end the session now. I'd like to finish with something hopeful. I think as theological institutions, we have a huge impact on the churches that we serve, on the denominations that we serve, on the people that are coming and seeing our institutions. Now we can have an impact. We are training the next generation and sometimes even the next 2 generations of pastors for the churches. What they see happening at our institution, it imprints on their minds how things should happen in their churches as well. You know, if they are taught by a good female professor, and then suddenly he goes to a church where women are not allowed really to do much, he's like, well, but I had a woman teach me. How come that is not possible here? So we have this amazing opportunity to change generations of churches to come, of creating a space for both men and women to serve. And I will always, again, steal that picture. Dr. David Tarus, he'll be here shortly. He once mentioned it, and it really stuck with me. The church is like a bird that needs 2 wings to fly. If a bird tries to fly only with one wing, it can try and it will leap a little, but it won't be able to soar. If it flies with two wings, as it was created to do, it will soar, and it will soar, and it can achieve heights beyond measure for the kingdom of God. If we only train men, that's difficult. If we train both of us, that's soar.